I'm Professor Indra Abeysekera. Let's look at how to write a journal article. There are 7 aspects in a journal article: abstract, introduction, relevant literature, and hypothesis development underpinned by theory, research methodology, findings, conclusions, and references. In the abstract starts with the aim of the study. Then it states the findings. Then shows the robustness of findings with the additional analysis undertaken. And some journal articles will also include research methodology and theory in the abstract. In the main article, first section is introduction. Starts with outlining the problem area. Why is it of interest to examine that problem area? Second, stating the specific research problem. Third, briefly outlining what prior research said. Fourth, showing what the findings are. Fifth, showing the contribution to the literature from the findings. Finally, introducing the next sections in the article. The second section in the journal article are the literature review and hypothesis development. So it can be divided into 2 subsections: literature review and hypothesis development. In the literature review, starts with outlining the literature related to the research problem. Then showing what the literature has highlighted and how does our research study differ from the existing literature. And finally, because our study differ from the existing literature, that there's a gap exists or a deficit exists, we show what we do, how we go about in contributing to the literature. The next subsection is the hypothesis development. First, we outline the constructs in the study and the definitions about the constructs, and then show the theories relating to the research problem. And how they are related to the constructs. And then stating the hypothesis to be tested in the study. The third section is research methodology. In that, we start with the data, that is the subjects or the observations in the study, and then outlining how we selected the sample. Third, we show how we measure the variables. And fourth, we then outline the empirical models that will be used to analyze data. Fourth are presenting results, in that we first describe the analyzed data using descriptive statistics. Then if it is a relational study, we show the relations between variables that we analyze using the main analysis, the empirical models. Third, we show additional analysis conducted and present. Fourthly, we present those results, the relations between variables using the additional analysis about the research problem. Fifth are the conclusions. First, we provide a summary of findings. Second, we show the limits on generalizability of the findings. And finally, propose future research ideas that has originated because of this study. Then there are references. The list of references should be compiled based on the journal requirement, based on the style that is proposed by a given journal. Let's apply what we have looked at into a study. This is a study that looked at the earnings quality, whether it is associated with corporate social responsibility. So in the abstract, aim of the study was to examine whether socially responsible firms behave differently from other firms in their financial reporting. Specifically, the study examined whether firms that exhibit corporate social responsibility behave in a responsible manner, and that responsible manner was looked from the perspective of constraining from earnings management. The study found that socially responsible firms are less likely to manage earnings through discretionary accruals, less likely to manipulate real operating activities, and less likely to be subjected to SEC, that is the Securities Exchange Commission, the regulators' investigations. Then it outlined the findings' robustness because it conducted additional analysis. It used a control for various incentives for CSR and earnings management, and then looked at the main model, and it considered various CSR dimensions and components. Then again looked at the main study, main findings, whether it is consistent with main findings. Then also it used alternative proxies for CSR and accruals quality, and then looked at whether it is consistent with main findings. So those things held true with the main findings. Implications of this study is that we found that ethical concerns are likely to drive managers to produce high quality financial reports. Some abstracts can include research methodology and theory, but was not in this study. In the main article, first section is introduction. So the problem area was that corporate social responsibility is an issue of growing interest to stakeholders. And the firm's attitude and the stakeholders' attitude towards corporate social responsibility has changed dramatically over the last few decades. Then it outlined the specific research problem, stated that it examines whether firms that appear to exhibit corporate social responsibility behave appropriately to constrain earnings management. That's a good behavior as compared to other firms. Third, it outlined what prior research said. It showed that the previous studies show that they integrate ethical expectations of business into rational economic and legal framework. And then there's also possibility that the corporate social responsibility practices are potentially linked to managers pursuing their self-interests. The fourth, what did the study find? Found three things. First, CSR firms that is corporate socially responsible firms are less likely to engage in aggressive earnings management. Second, it found that CSR firms appear to reduce or avoid earnings manipulation through discretionary accruals. And third, that these CSR firms are less likely to engage in real activities manipulation. Fifth, it outlined the contribution to the literature. First, it showed that ethics can drive managers to produce higher quality financial reports. And they also shed light of CSR, that is corporate social responsibility firms. CSR extends financial reporting transparency by its good behavior, and findings have implications to the investing community. Then finally, in that section, it outlined the remaining sections. In the literature review and hypothesis development, in that literature review section, it showed the literature related to the research problem, showing that CSR and earnings management literature are few and the findings are mixed. Then it highlighted how does this study differ from the previous ones. And it said that unlike prior studies that highlighted managerial opportunism in explaining the connection between CSR and financial reporting, this study examined ethical concerns as an alternative motivation for CSR that drives corporate financial reporting, that drives CSR that drives corporate financial reporting. So it's the ethical concerns that drives that good behavior. Third, then it highlighted the gap in the literature. It said that because of the mixed finding, it's difficult to draw conclusions about the relationship, and this study provides a comprehensive investigation into the US firms, and specifically this study examines the opportunistic financial reporting that includes accruals management, real activities manipulation, and the corporate regulators' um, um, actions. Yeah. The next subsection, was hypothesis development. Then first it talked about the constructs, said that the CSR concept is being contested, but it is used in the most widely used concept. And then it showed the theories that talks about CSR. And then because this study takes the perspective of ethical behavior, that it took the view that managers have a moral perspective here to do the right thing. So based on that moral perspective, they predicted that CSR firms are likely to engage in earnings, is less likely to engage in earnings management. But on the other hand, if there's an opportunistic incentive, then CSR firm is more likely to engage in opportunistic earnings management. So it stated two hypotheses, one based on the transparent financial reporting, the other one based on the opportunistic financial reporting perspectives. Third section was on research methodology. So it said that it's using the data from the corporate social performance data from the KLD database. Then it showed how it selected the sample from the firms that are available from the database. So after matching the KLD data with CompuStat data, because it has to get other data for the study about these firms, the social responsible firms data comes from the KLD database, and then it has to find the other data from CompuStat database. Because of missing data, that it finally came up with a sample size or the observations of 18,160 Fermi observations. Because it looked at the Fermi years from 1991 to 2009. Then it outlined how variables were measured. So there were four main variables: CSR scores, discretionary accruals, real activities manipulation, and accounting and auditing enforcement releases produced by the regulators. It had three models, empirical models. Two of them were using multiple regression. The other one was on logistic regression. The first model was looking at the discretionary accruals, whether CSR, corporate social responsibility firms, and other firms have different influence on discretionary accruals. So dependent variable was discretionary accruals, and CSR score was independent variable. In the second model, they looked at the real activities manipulation, whether that's been influenced by the CSR firms, and CSR firms were measured using CSR score, which is the independent variable. The third was the probability of the regulators making enforcements. That was the dependent variable, and the independent variable was the CSR scores. So the results were, in the results, it first described the analyzed data, your sample description, then the descriptive statistics, sample description showed the distribution of observations by industry, and then provided the descriptive statistics of variables using the central tendencies, mean, median, and then the variance, which is the standard deviation. The third was the correlation between variables. Second, it presented the relations between variables found in the main analysis based on the 3 empirical models. Third, it presented additional analysis that was undertaken to find out whether the main analysis findings hold, sustain, and then it provided construct validity using various proxies of earnings management, and it controlled for financial performance using returns of assets. It included institutional analyst coverage of firms as additional control variable, and use another measure of accruals quality. So these 4 aspects were analyzed one by one to see whether that main findings still hold true. And then the relations between variables were presented using this additional analysis. Conclusions were, in the conclusion section, first it summarized the findings. So it said that CSR firms are less likely to engage in aggressive earnings management through discretionary accruals and real activities manipulation, and then said that the CSR plays an important role in constraining earnings management, and third, it said that results are consistent with the transparent financial reporting hypothesis. That's the ethical perspective of the hypothesis. Limits on generalizability. There was an implicit reference, but in the main article, so it was about US firms, but it was not explicitly mentioned here in the conclusion section. Future research propositions was that it said that this is the first stream that examine the issues such as ethics and reputation affecting corporate financial reporting, and then it said that the CSR firms seems to consider long-term view, and it's good to examine CSR firms' longer-term corporate financial performance.